Working on the quiz preview today. Gonna do as much as we can with the notes as we do this. And so I like to mark them as I go, so I make sure everything's in the right place. We've got extra info here that could come in handy for us that won't be sitting there on the quiz. So again, keeping the notes updated, a good idea. So the very first question. This scatter plot shows the number of points a student's grade increased when they started to make more effort to turn in homework. Hey, good idea, and study. Find an equation of the line of best fit. Okay, we don't have to draw the line. The line is drawn. What we need to do is try to find points that are going through intersections. So I'm going to zoom in a little more here for a second. Okay, quite a bit more here for a second. Because what we need to find are some points that are right on those crosshairs, those intersections. There usually will be 2 or 3 of them. And so those are going to be the easiest points for us to be able to make the equation of this line width, to find this slope. So I'm going to zoom back out. And what we're going to do, first thing we're going to do is we're going to write down the 2 points. So here's my x's, here's my y's. So I'm at 2, 2. So there's one of my points. And then my other one is at 8, 6. So once I have the 2 points, now I've got to go through and I am going to look to get to an equation. You're like, well, wait a minute, there's nothing else that's here. I see this y equals, so how am I supposed to get to that? So I go looking and I'm like, wait a minute, writing an equation from 2 points. Okay, step 1, find the slope using this formula. All right, we've done this a bunch. So y2 minus y1 and x2 minus x1. So let's see here. 6 minus 2 is 4. 8 minus 2 is 6. Now, would it be terrible if I left it as that? No. But if I do 4 divided by, oops, that's glary. Let's try and avoid that. If I do 4 divided by 6 and I do math, enter, enter, I can actually reduce that down. Now, if I don't, is it wrong? Technically, no. But it's also going to make it easier when I do my next step. So I would suggest doing that. So you're like, okay, I found the slope, but that's not an equation. Okay, I'm going to cover this up for a sec, but that's okay. Pick one of the original points and use your slope from step 1. This is your x1, y1, and m. Okay, so let's say, I don't think it matters which one we use. Let's just use this pair. So we're going to go with this. And we're going to plug them into point slope. So start following the order here. So y minus, my y1 is 2, equals my m x minus my x1. Now that fraction does not look like the most fun, but we're gonna figure this out. We're gonna be all right. So let's see here. A little bit of distributing action. Well, that's kind of funny. Okay. So I go along. And you're like, okay, Hardy, I don't know what that is. So let's grab our calculator. 2 divided by 3 times -2. Hardy, can I put a decimal? We can. We could math enter this, but if we go decimally, I'm not going to scream. So we'll put that in. And I got one step to go. Because I noticed this says y equals, so I need y by itself. So the last thing I'm going to do is add 2. So I got 2/3 x and -1.33 plus 2. Weird, but true. And I get to my answer. So just, again, usually on the quizzes, hint, hint, it comes out cleaner than that, and it will. But the process is going to be the same. And I was able to use my notes to do what I needed. Okay, this hopefully is the layup question. All direct variations equations go through what point? We just did this yesterday. 0, 0. And that's it. No math to do, just 0, 0. We're good. Speaking of variation, if y varies directly as x and y equals 10 when x equals 2, write a direct variation equation that relates. Okay, we just got done saying every direct variation equation goes through 0, 0. So that's one of my points. There's the values to get me for my other points. So 2, 10. And just like as we were doing, let me get my notes flipped over here. Should have stapled them back together. There we go. Once we have them, my first job is to find the slope. All right. When I'm finding slope, and again, I'm going to have that on my note sheet, and it's also at the top of the page. I just noticed that. y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. And we can do 10 divided by 2. That's one I would expect you're going to do. And as we spoke about yesterday, if I'm paying close attention, I've actually done all the math work already. Because what we noticed yesterday was, whatever I got for the slope, I just tuck that in front of x and I'm done in y equals mx. So if I do that, I just type that and I'm done. Now if I forget, all is not lost. I'm just going to end up doing more work than I need to, because now I would go back and I would do point slope again. And do I want to do all this? I don't know. Y minus y1 equals m. X minus x1. Well, y minus 0 is just y. And if I distribute, I get 5x. 5 times 0 is 0, but that really doesn't do anything. So the key when you're doing direct variation, once you find the slope, just tuck it in front of the x and y equals and you're done. Don't make this complicated. Don't do all this. That's not necessary when we know that's how it works. So that's pretty straightforward. And then we're still going direct variation. But now I've got a story problem, but I have the notes. So I'm peeking through and I'm like, okay, if cost varies directly with the number of sandwiches you buy, and 6 deli sandwiches cost $28.50, here's what I'm going to direct you to. Check this out. The problem before can actually help me. Y varies directly as x. Cost varies directly with the number of sandwiches. Whatever comes before varies is y. Whatever comes after varies is x, just in case you're not told that. Other than that, we're going to do the exact same thing we did in number 3. 0, 0 is still a point. It hasn't changed. So now I look and I'm like, all right, so cost is y, so 28.50 is y. I should have made these little parentheses bigger. And the 6 deli sandwiches is x. And now I'm basically just copying what I did up above. So here's x and y1, x and y2, y1, y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. Ooh, let's see. This is going to be kind of funky. $4.75. Okay. So basically, that's telling me y equals 4.75x. Just like we did up above, you tuck the m in front of x, you're done. So what's that telling me? That's telling me each sandwich that I buy is going to cost $4.75. So, what is the cost of 20 sandwiches? Sandwiches are x. I'm going to plug 20 in there for x. $95. But so far on what we've seen on this review, every single thing has had an example to work directly off of on your notes. So we kind of keep looking and we're like, okay, let's see here. Write an equation of a line in point slope form that goes through here and has this. Okay. So let's see, point slope form. I look up at the top. Here's point slope form, so I need those 3 values to plug into. So I come back down. Sorry that I'm giving some of you seasick here. x1, y1, m. I have all 3 of my points. So I'm literally now, and I got it on my notes too, so let me move this up. There we go. So now I'm just going to start writing. Y minus y1 equals m x minus, ooh, what happens when you minus the negative? Yeah, because if I have minus a negative, it gets me positive. And here's the cool thing. Write an equation of a line in point slope form. That's point slope. I'm done. Don't keep going. Don't distribute. Don't solve for y. That's why it's important to read carefully and have your notes sitting there to make sure that you get yourself in good shape on these. But again, if you've been practicing too, though, that makes life a little easier. Okay, rewrite the equation in slope-intercept form. I'm back to my notes again. So this time we want to solve for y. The parentheses need to go. Make sure that -2 gets to the x and to the 4. That's why I put the arrows in there to remind me. Then again, I'm trying to get y alone. Do my opposite. And I'm done. It's a couple steps. Nothing that's going to be too bad. Rewrite the equation, ooh, in standard form. Handy, telling you. Okay. X and y got to be on the same side. So y is already over here. Let's put x over there too. Reminding ourselves that this is not negative 4xy. There's still a plus in there. They're not the same term. But you're like, yep, x and y on the same side. I'm good. A, the number in front of x must be positive. If it's not, one quick step will fix it. If we multiply everything in this equation by -1, it changes the signs on every value. There is nothing here that says the y value, b, must be positive. And I'm good. So if I do the same thing on b, x and y are together, check. The value in front of x, a, is positive, check. And it's a whole number, no fractions. Hey, I didn't even have to do the other step on that one. That's cool. And so we're starting to see as we do these. Again, every single thing so far has been in my notes. Write an equation in slope-intercept form that goes through the following points. Okay, so job 1. I have a feeling. Writing equations from 2 points. Well, hot dog. Find the slope. I got my formula here in the notes. It's on the front of my quiz 2. I mean, my quiz preview. y2 minus y1. x2 minus x1. But again, minus a negative is going to become plus there. So I got my slope. I got my point to work with. Because we're going to pick one of the points. It doesn't matter which one. And your slope. And we're going to plug them in to point slope. This one. So y minus y1. Straight just doing substitution. Equals m. X minus x1. And again, if you minus a negative, that becomes plus. We need to get to y equals, though. So we're going to do what we did up in number 6. We're going to distribute. And we're going to do our one step to get y by itself. And when you add the 4, again, plain number to plain number. I don't want to add it to x. That wouldn't be a like term. And as I say on every quiz, show me as many steps as you can. Even if you get here and you're like, okay, I remember to do the slope and then I forget the rest. Do the slope. Get the point for that. But I think with the notes and examples, I think you're going to have enough for all of it. And then our last two on this page, I got to find them here for a second. There we go. Is parallel and perpendicular. Let's see if I can pull this off. This could be a little tricky, but we're going to try. So I look, and I'm like, okay, the line is parallel. The slope is the same. So there's my slope. There's my M. There's the point that I'm given. And I'll be honest, at this point, I'm doing the exact same thing I did in number 8 now. That was the only other thing that was different. So I'm going to do y minus y1. We use point slope a lot in this little area. Equals my slope, -5. X minus. X1 is negative once again, so we change the sign. And even if you forgot and left that as minus and did everything else right, you're going to get points. I can't stress enough, show me as much as you can. Do it to it, people. Distribute, multiply, get y by itself. Once you do this a time or two, it will not be a bad thing to work with. And so if I can survive parallel, which again is just point slope for like the 5th time, perpendicular is going to be the same thing with one exception. When we do perpendicular, let me come back to perpendicular here for a minute in my notes. It's what's called a negative reciprocal. In other words, I'm going to take the fraction, I'm going to flip it, so 2 over 1 became 1 over 2, and I'm going to change the sign. If it's positive, I made it negative. So I look at this one. I'm going to take 1/3, I'm going to flip it, 3 over 1, and I'm going to change the sign. And since -3 over 1 is just -3, that's what I'm going to use. Wouldn't hurt if I'd use -3 over 1. Everything else, the same thing again that we've done in like, now I think 6 problems. Y minus y1 equals M. And again, you've got this formula in your notes, and you've also got, there it is, right there. I can just follow it. You can put a star on this because that one gets used a ton. X minus x1. And here we go again. Multiply through. Again, watch for signs. Negative times negative is positive. And since we're trying to get y alone, we'll do the opposite of what's with it. Step by step, piece by piece. And again, you've got all these forms worked out in the notes as well to try and help out. Like, oofta hardy, this is never going to end. It is. This is the part that's going to go fast now. Now we're back to Unit 3. We're back to the graphing stuff. Reminder, if you have your Unit 3 notes still, that is legal to use. But if not, just pay real close attention and kind of run some of this back through, and I bet you'll be able to remember. So, write the equation of the graphed line. All right, the notes are not going to help us here unless we have our good old Unit 3 notes floating around. So, what's M and B again? M is the slope. B is the y-intercept. the y-intercept should always be the easiest number to find. Where is it crossing the y-axis? My other job then becomes to find one more point that's not just randomly going, but going through one of the intersections. There's usually going to be a couple of them. Because once I find that, I can choose any of those 2 points that I want. And I'm going to count from one point to the other. So let's say I go from here to here. I went down 1, which is negative. 1, 2, 3, and right 4, which is positive. Once I have those two things, I'm just substituting them in. Y equals m x, don't lose your x, plus b. And I'm done. So it's always the same, nothing weird. Find where it crosses the y-axis. Oh, where's some other points? There. There. Oh, there's lots this time. There. Okay, I got lots of points that'll work through those intersections. And once I get there again, you pick 2. It don't matter. So, I don't know, let's say these 2. So I went up 2. And I went right 1, which is also positive. You could make that 2 if you wanted to. Not a big deal. Y equals m x plus b. And roll on our way. Little basic line graphing in the next part. Again, there's my b. We always do that first. Here's my y-axis. So I go to 5, put me a point. My slope is negative 2 over 1. So I'm going to go down 2, because that's the negative. And I'm going to go right 1. I'll do this a couple of times just to make sure things are looking good. And draw my line. Same on the next one. Do be careful, though. You do have to watch signs on things. Like here, my b is negative 3. So I got to go down 3 and put a point. And then this time my slope is 1 over 4. So I go up 4. Excuse me, up 1. It says 1 right there. Up 1. And you might be like, hey, Hardy, I can't go up 1 and another 4. So remember, you also have the option of changing or doing the opposite of both of these. So you could do 1 down and 4 left, because negative divided by negative is positive. Down 1. Left 4. And get my line in. So again, just a little slope review, kind of seeing how things work there. Graph using the x and y intercept. Okay, this is the one where we said the opposite variable equals 0. So if that's true, I'm going to take my x term and I'm going to set it equal to 18. And for y, I'm going to take my y term and I'm going to set it equal to 18. Because that y equals 0 on this first one wipes out the y part. And on the second one, the x equals 0 wipes out the x part. So all I got to do 18 divided by 6 is 3. I make a dot, I make a dot on 3 on my x-axis. 18 divided by negative 2 is negative 9. Make that dot on the y-axis. And those are the only 2 points I have. So no third point this time. And we get ready to go. So a lot of similarities with things. And again, I wouldn't even care, yes, I'm even putting this on a video, if there's a couple of minor things you want to remind yourself of and you write them maybe in the back of your Unit 4 note packet. You got a little bit of room at the bottom there if you needed to put a little something there to remind you of some things. It would not be the worst idea ever. And then finally, with the hints, it's always nice to have hints. Graph a couple of inequalities, and then we're done. Still B. I make my y-intercept. Now, with my slope, put the negative on one of the numbers, not both. It does not matter which number you put it on as long as it's only one of them. So here, if I put it on the 1, I'm going to go down 1 and right 2. Down 1 and right 2. But don't just draw the line through automatically, because remember, with these, I got to pay attention to the arrow to see what type of line it is. If there's no line under it, it's a dotted line. If there's a line under it, it's a solid. So this is a dotted or a dashed line. And when I try to see if I shade above or below, the y is being eaten by the arrow. The arrow is going to the right. We shade above. And we're set. But of course, I got to throw one twist in. X, wait a minute, there's no y. X is greater than negative 2. You're like, okay, well, x is negative 2 goes right there. So, quick question. X equals for an equation, is that line going to be up and down or side to side? Up and down. So we're going to have an up and down. It still is just the arrow, though. Okay, so if it was y and just a number, it would be side to side. And we really don't have an above-below here. But when x is greater than negative 2, when x is getting bigger, x gets bigger as we go to the right, because that's where all the positive numbers are. So your job, I would say this evening, would be 2 things. Number 1, if your Unit 4 notes are not done, make sure you grab a copy from the back. I'm going to put a blank copy on, spit it out, Hardy, Classroom as well. If you have not finished other parts of your practice, I would do that. And let me say one other thing, show you one other thing as we're going here. Hardy quickly moving around. Again, right on the front of Classroom, there are the notes if you need to complete anything. I will post the video a little later as well, and I'll print a blank one on there if for some reason between today and tomorrow you misplace things. But practice, 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 practice.